Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for dialing into this fireside chat as part of the virtual South by Southwest tour. I'm very sad not to be in Austin, but equally it's been offset by the ability to bring together people from the States and the UK, some very talented individuals here today. And I hope the conversation we're about to have is something you find stimulating. So the rise of the creator economy and the abdication of brand control. So I think we can all agree over the last 12 months that the pandemic has shattered many economies, but seen the rise of others. And I'm sure we would all concur that social media is a medium to be reckoned with. I'm ZAID AL-ZAIDY. I'm the group CEO of the Beyond Collective. I was trained in classical marketing at Unilever and worked on many, many iconic brands over the last few years. But I'm a big believer that everything a brand does counts, that everything you do is brand. And we know the rules have changed, and we know that brands' expectations for how they should behave and garner the interest they once had is going to change. The rules have changed, and I've got three companions here who are each at the forefront of this new economy, and I'd like them to introduce themselves one by one. So JIDÉ, do you want to say hi and tell us who you are?
So my name is JIDÉ. I'm CEO at the YOKE network, and we essentially have a TikTok creator network of over 2,000 creators that is managed through our creator marketplace app, and we're also the company behind the UK's largest content creator house, the Wave House.
Great, thank you very much. And George?
Yeah, I'm George. I'm the CEO of Be Hooked Digital. We're a social media consultancy for entertainment and music brands and talent. So yeah, great to be here. Thanks for the intro, Saeed.
Good. And Ollie, last of all.
Hey, I'm Oliver, Managing Director of Social Chain. We're a social first marketing agency. We do pretty much everything and anything in social media, from insight, strategy, creative, through to all the execution and distributional aspects.
Great. So thanks, guys. I think the first thing to say is we've all been through a lot over the last 10 to 12 months, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your business, how it's responded to the pandemic, what the highs and lows have been, and we'll reverse this one. So I'm going to start with Oliver again. So Oliver, how's it been?
How's it been? Personally, professionally, different, right? I think the same can be said for everyone. I think if I go back 1 year, when this first happened, I'm an eternal optimist, so I had a very optimistic view of what the world would turn out like. It ended up being very different. I was wrong on many fronts, but being an optimist, I kind of look on the things that we had to do. We had to transform our business. We produce thousands of pieces of content. And when the world stopped, we weren't able to travel. We weren't able to get together. We had to rethink that in entirety, which involved, us and our partners working with more creators, working with more influencers. And I think one of the more interesting aspects of that whole saga was that we started to see brands think differently about creative, remove some of the ego and the archaic barriers that exist around, only doing things a certain way, falling within very restricted brand guidelines, despite, the internet saying something different. And I think it was a good thing. We started to become more creative. We changed our processes, and business is good.
And how did the brand owners feel about having to let go even more during this period of time?
The funny thing is, when you're forced to do something new, when you're forced to change, you're a little more open-minded, right? I think we've all been forced to change, whether it's we think about internals, externals. So I think when it comes to brands, I think the marketing industry, whether you're in a conservative brand that is very risk adverse for obvious reasons, I think when evidence presents itself and you do things that are effective and work, you can slowly shift perceptions, slowly shift how you do things. And that's what we started to see. I think there was some hesitation at first. There was some salesmanship on our behalf, but brands work with us because they put trust in our thinking and our understanding of the internet.
Great. Okay, great. And George, what about you? How's it been?
It was crazy, really. Just like Ollie said, different to business different to personal, but I think when we were heading into this as a company, we didn't know what would happen. Obviously, being an online digital company, we knew that stuff was going to move more heavily into that space, but we didn't know quite what would happen. We work in the live music industry as well, so we had some difficulty with our clients in that space. But pretty much overnight, things just went crazy with new ideas and innovation. We started working with a lot of clients that wanted to facilitate live streams, which was an amazing new part of our business. And yeah, it's been pretty amazing to see all the new, fresh ideas that with brands working with talent as well. I think that one of our big things this year was JW Anderson, which is a fashion brand in Louis Vuitton, Hennessy. And we did some fantastic work there with a Harry Styles cardigan and jumping on trends with TikTok, which was great. But also on the flip end of that, working with Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber and connecting with his audience, which is largely an older audience, and working on with platforms like Facebook, which have become obviously still a massive key consideration for us as a business in terms of advertising, but with our younger talent, and we've kind of focused more on Instagram and TikTok. But again, Facebook was another place to push Andrew's messaging, and we won an award for that at the Drum. So yeah, it's been a very exciting year in terms of like a fresh approach and mixing it up a bit more with the team.
Great. And interestingly, working on a fashion brand with a background of, being really protective and pristine about its haute couture kind of like positioning, and then letting go, with the Harry Styles cardigan thing you talked about is mental. And that's bang on the money in terms of the title of today's chat. You'd never expect that level of brand to let go that much. It's amazing. And JIDÉ, do you want to talk to me a little bit about your business, which obviously is flourishing, and working with TikTok that we've seen rise significantly, obviously.
Yeah, so the past 12 months has been pretty phenomenal, just from a business perspective, just because we've been in the TikTok space for nearly 2.5 years now, and like we kind of saw for the first time really advertisers really taking TikTok seriously and actually putting real budget behind it, behind the platform. And within our creator network, like we've grown, we worked with over 2,000 creators at scale last year, and like the expansion of content on the TikTok platform itself has been phenomenal in terms of there's so many different talks. That's what you kind of call it. So there's different types of creators that are jumping on. It's a lot more mainstream, and whereas 12 months ago you're essentially like begging some of the biggest creators in the world to come onto the platform, and now it's just natural for them. And if they're not on it, then they're kind of late. So we saw like huge expansion in our business in terms of our clients and the types of work that we're doing. And also like the rise of short form content as well has been huge just across social media. As you can see with like Snap and the Spotlight on TikTok as well. YouTube with their shorts and reels on Instagram. So it's all kind of skewed in our favor. And like finally that we launched like the largest content creator house in the UK. And those astronomical results with that in terms of like we had over like 300 million views on our
Is that with the Wave House, yeah?
Yeah, with the Wave House. So over the first like 21 days, we went super viral, and like we're coming back with more as well with that towards the end of Q1 as well. So it's crazy.
Great. And you coined the phrase "the rise of the creator economy," and as someone who is into brand building, I kind of understand that building a big creator economy means great business for everyone. But why back to the question here is like, aren't you just asking brands to jump on the coattails of other people, and how are they going to get their bang for buck, and how's it good for their brand business, not just for your business?
Well, that's a really good question. I think like just the question itself in terms of what is the creator economy. So the creator economy is like essentially right now we're seeing the shift of power from the platforms and from like traditional media businesses and entities towards the actual creators themselves. And there's like the rise of the essentially you call it a creator media business. Just like, for example, Mr. Beast, he's got the reach and scale of with like larger than like the BBC, larger than some of these massive organizations. It's just one person. With Joe Rogan, he's essentially $1 billion podcast, like in terms of the amount of reach that he gets. He's a business, and so it's like a personal media business. So I think that for brands, what we're seeing is now that creators actually working with brands, or the ones at the top especially, they have the opportunity to work with whoever they want, or even build their own brands or build their own businesses. So with the rise of the creator economy and how it's going to affect brands, is that I think that brands, for them going to work with the top creators, they need to do their due diligence and look more longer term in terms of the relationships, and less of just short activations, but longer term partnerships, and kind of not just ride on the coattails, but actually take the creators that they're working with more seriously, so that they can build long-term sustainable organic content together.
That's interesting. So it's, I mean, George, you're like working with like famous entertainment properties and artists whose cachet and influence arguably is greater, you know, something that many brands would kind of envy. So how does it become a joined up relationship, really? Are brands not just almost kind of on their knees begging to get attention? How does it become something where the brand really, really benefits?
Well, for us at Be Hooked, you know, we kind of call it hooking up, which is the process of us looking at the brands that we work with, all the brands we're connected to, and also other agencies that we speak to as well, that work with brands. So for us, it's like hooking it up, and I think the most important thing when we hook things up is that people actually have stuff in common. And that there's going to be a relationship, not unlike just, you know, people getting together just for, you know, dating and stuff. So for us, it's a constant case of like analysing the brands that we're working with and what their missions are, and does that then align with, you know, the talent that we're looking at. And sometimes, you know, it just comes together. I think I mentioned when we were kind of talking before that, you know, we're working with a very famous footballer. He has a specific way of doing things and content that he likes to create, and that just happens to match perfectly with the brand goals of the brand that we're working with, and you know, that's success in a nutshell. So it's very important to kind of get those two working in parallel together.
I think when we last spoke, we talked about the fact that we're all predicting that the mandate for brands to get stuck into social is going to be like greater and greater over the next few months. And then we started talking about how do you get brands ready for social, and should all brands go social? And there are so many pitfalls, right? From getting it wrong when it comes to Black Lives Matter. We witnessed L'Oreal getting it very, very wrong. If you think about all the conversations around platforms and their ability to support freedom of speech and the role they've played in the changing landscape in democracy, there are so many kind of potential bear traps and pitfalls for brands. So, Oliver, I'm going to ask you, how do you get your brands ready for this world in which they've got to operate in, but arguably it's more risky for them than it's ever been? How do you guide them through that?
That's if you're a big multi-billion-dollar brand, that's a multi-billion-dollar question. I think it links back to what we're talking about generally, you know, the creator economy. The way I look at the creator economy is it's kind of this democratization of media. You genuinely can't fathom how many choices you have as a brand. You know, on YouTube alone, there are over 20,000 people with 1 million subscribers at their fingertips, often young people in their bedrooms creating. And that's like a small team, one person. There are over 250,000 people have over 100,000 people at their fingertips. Move on to Instagram, onto TikTok, and you can't extrapolate. So I think in that abundance of choice presents all the opportunity in the world for brands, but it brings so many threats and challenges because it's complex. We often talk about social media being one thing. Social media is many things. Each platform, the average person's active on 6.5 social networks. You know, every platform has its own cultures, its subcultures, its own algorithmic factors. And if you're a social marketeer, you're expected to know those things, which is largely impossible because they change daily. Like a fact I tell you today may be different tomorrow. So I think the key for brands is you have to take social media seriously, but it's more about looking intrinsically at the business themselves and making sure you're equipped to be effective in social media. You know, there are a couple of principles that aren't tactics or specific, but they apply to everyone. You know, to be good at social media, you need to understand culture. You need to understand what's happening in the world. If to be good at social media, you have to be fast, you have to be agile. You know, being fast and agile is more than just a process, it's being brave. Like, to be fast and create something quickly, you need to know yourself, being very self-aware. And I think brands that are self-aware, knowing when they should speak and when they shouldn't, it's effectively a superpower on the internet today. So I think if you can get those principles and you can look inwards at your culture of your company, and the partners that you work with, and have the right types of philosophical values, I think you can be tremendously effective. And we've seen time and time again, brand go from, you know, not existing 5 years ago to being a world leading brand today. So the opportunity is there, but it's not easy.
For those brand owners out there listening in, I think that brands should feel very encouraged, because often the answer is just defining that narrative, that consistent role within culture. And that's about understanding what your brand's for, against, I think with that kind of clarity and self-awareness, I think it will guide you through, we're going to participate in this subculture because that's relevant to us and we can add value. We're going to ignore that subculture because we've got no place at all. Because if you look at the history of advertising and how great brands have been historically built, often they've captured the imagination by stepping really far away from their category, right? If you think about Apple and the way it launched itself against the beige computing world in the 1990s, it stood for something epic and on a big human campaign. And arguably in social, I think brands are they can achieve way more than they used to, which is proximity and understanding and empathy and engagement, but they might not be able to step away from their category as much, which I think is interesting. And so, you know, we've been working with Subway a lot this year, and our dilemma has been, how do you take them from a brand that's all about big brand awareness, advertising, stores open, to brands that need to operate on a more hyper-local level, using social activation to be more meaningful on a smaller level. So, you know, working out that some people are chili hotheads, so that's a really relevant way to serve up a sub to them. And I think it's really exciting for me, because I think it means that brands need to understand themselves better than ever before. And I think that's the way to manage those pitfalls for me, is that narrative, that authenticity, knowing when you can play a role, when you can't. Do we want to attempt to predict maybe you can tell us, what do you think the emerging trends are, and what are you expecting to be busy with over the next 12 months maybe? JIDÉ, do you want to, I know you have you have a view on what's going to happen. Do you want to start?
Yeah, so in terms of our business, we're creator first in terms of we help the creator side, but we also integrate brands help brands to integrate and best work with creators. Some of the stuff that we're kind of seeing is that there's a diversification of creator revenue streams, be it that them going direct to their audience in terms of Patreon or OnlyFans, them opening their own Shopify stores. So that directness is obviously giving the creators more power, but what I'm also seeing is that trends from the past, or businesses that have done it successfully, such as Gymshark and PLT, what they've done is they've made creators be their forefront, be their first point of marketing. So and with that, it actually makes the top creators want to go out and work with these brands even at a cut price, or even at a lower cost, but they kind of have that in Gen Z, it's called clout. So what I'm seeing is over the next 12 months is that the brands that are investing in these indie creators and building their own creator networks, they'll be able to attract the higher value creators, and it's going to be a lot more organic in terms of the type of content that they're making. And the creators themselves are going to be able to build their own businesses through their own audiences, but there's going to be a lot more organic relationships. The relationships that are going to be successful are the organic ones, are the ones where it's a longer term strategy and not just the small branded activations, because they have less of an impact, but over the long term, the real winners are the ones that really invest in this new economy.
How can you even begin to be long term in a kind of economy that's notoriously about waves of interest that come and go?
No, that's a very, very good question. And it's something that Oliver kind of touched on in his response to the previous question, and it's the way that the brand sets up internally. Because I definitely think that you need to structure your team so that you can, one, kind of cover all bases from like the top brand level down to what's actually going on in these subcultures, what's actually going on in these platforms. So I couldn't put it all in the answer now, but what I would say is that there needs to be a lot more agility within teams, and actually kind of know who you want to message, and finding that subculture, finding that culture online and that audience on, be it Reddit, be it on TikTok, be it on YouTube, finding that platform that works best for your product and your brand, and then kind of building out or scaling from there. That's what I would say.
Yeah, so a really strong strategy. And then George, tell me, what are you seeing? What are you hoping for as an entrepreneur?
Well, I mean, yeah, the big, we're quite lucky because we obviously work with talent, and we also work with big brands like Activision and, as I mentioned, Louis Vuitton, Hennessy. And I think that what we're seeing is the biggest brands that we work with that are usually like cruise ships to move in one direction. And we're touching on this as we're talking about the flexibility of the brands, but their approach is becoming far more like talent and far more like creators. So how do we produce content at scale, like short form content, as JIDÉ mentions, but also just how we put that together. And whereas we used to face those challenges mostly with talent in having 20 posts going out a week and all different types of narratives happening, that's happening more with brands. And we're taking the very similar approach to like pre-planning lots of content ahead of time, and then also reactive moments throughout. For some of our biggest brands, and it's a very exciting space to be in. I mean, for us as a business, it means a lot more work with our partners and our clients, and that's fantastic. Great,
brilliant. And then Oliver,
crystal ball time. I think we're going to see a little more of a worlds colliding. I couldn't agree more with sort of JIDÉ and George around the creator economy continuing to establish. I think, 2 years ago, brands were testing working with influencers. Now they're establishing teams internally. 4 years ago, we would book thousands of influencers on behalf of the brands that we work with. Today, they're building in-house structures, and they're leaning on partners externally more and more for either working directly with platforms or talent management companies, and leaning on agencies so that influencer marketing or the creators that they work with don't sit in silo. They're part of a wider sort of system in place. And I think we're going to see, the creator economy continue to grow. But I think it's going to merge with this community economy. And I think for the longest time, brands have chased scale on the internet. You could go viral, you can get millions of impressions, became really normal. If you just say that out loud, it just feels very normal. But I think what brands will start to recognize is, and you mentioned it earlier, was that kind of the depth of storytelling is going to be so important. And you achieve scale by going deeper with your storytelling, the types of things you create, and also focusing on your community. We're seeing like the Wall Street bets, the Reddit take on the establishment, and we're seeing the fringes of the internet. These really rich, deep communities have massive impact in the world. And I think brands will recognize that. They will start to invest, they'll start to care. And the first step in acting is kind of caring about something. And I think the rest of the world will start to realize that a meme isn't this trivial thing. It can be pretty powerful in the right hands. So yeah, a lot more respect on deep storytelling. I think we're going to see more people care about their community and start to build them. JIDÉ mentioned Mr. Beast, huge community, huge influence. Joe Rogan has, disciples of people that adore him across the world. You have FaZe Clan that have merged culture, selling product, media, coming together. So there's the emergence of new age marketing, new age brands. And I think traditional brands that are established will recognize and start to adapt and change accordingly.
Great. I definitely try and learn from my 13-year-old son. Who was coaching me before this session, by the way. All right, guys, I think we're up for time. It's been a great session, and I hope the viewers have got something out of it. Good luck, and hopefully see you soon.